Hello everyone, my dear viewers. This video explores real-life moments where familiar expectation collide with something far more structured, a system built on consistency, stability, and quick rules that don't bend for anyone.
I didn't expect Australia to feel like this. Not better. Not worse. Just different in a way that quietly unsettles you. Around day 3, something shifts. You stop reacting to the obvious things, the accent, the sun, the beaches, and start noticing something else. Something structural. The way things function without friction. And that's when the real comparison begins, whether you want it to or not. I walked into a small cafe in Melbourne and asked for a large vanilla latte, extra hot, oat milk, with a shot of caramel. The barista blinked once. Not annoyed. Just paused. "We have coffee," he said calmly. I laughed, thinking he was joking. "Yeah, that's what I want." He nodded slowly. Flat white. I hesitated. Sure. It arrived. No syrup. No customization. I drank it. And immediately realized something uncomfortable. It was better. I went back the next day, determined to fix it. "Can I add vanilla?" I asked. The barista looked genuinely confused. Why? Not rude. Just logical. I didn't have a good answer. Back home, customization feels like control. Here, it felt like unnecessary interference. I drank the coffee as it was. No tweaks. No upgrades. And for the first time, I wondered if maybe the system wasn't limiting me, it was protecting something. At a restaurant in Sydney, I finished my meal and left a tip on the table. Not huge, just standard American instinct. The waiter came back, looked at it, then at me. "You forgot this," he said, placing the money back. I shook my head. "No, it's for you." He paused. Why? That question hit harder than expected. Not rejection. Just confusion. I tried to explain. "For good service." He nodded slowly. "That's my job." I pushed a little. "Yeah, but extra appreciation." He smiled politely, but it didn't land. "You already paid." The conversation ended there. No gratitude performance. No awkward gratitude speech. Just a boundary. And the strange part wasn't that tipping didn't exist. It was that appreciation didn't need to be monetized. I walked out feeling slightly embarrassed, like I'd tried to introduce a rule that didn't belong in that system. That's when the pattern started forming in my head. It wasn't that Australians were doing things better. It was that they were doing them differently, with less negotiation. The American system bends constantly, toward the customer, toward the moment, toward emotion. The Australian one doesn't bend as much. It holds shape. And when you're used to flexibility, structure feels cold at first. Until you realize how much stability it quietly creates.
It's a very interesting story. Listen please and write your comments. Thank you.
I tried to cross the street in Brisbane when there were no cars. Completely empty road. Back home, that's a green light. Here, I stepped forward and heard someone behind me say, "You'll want to wait." I turned. "There's nothing coming." He nodded. Still. The light was red. Everyone stood still. No enforcement. No police. Just compliance. I waited. Not because I agreed. Because suddenly, moving felt like breaking something invisible. When the light turned green, everyone moved at once. Calm, synchronized. No rush. No hesitation. And I realized something strange, the rule wasn't about safety in that moment. It was about consistency. The system worked because people followed it even when it felt unnecessary. Back home, rules are flexible suggestions. Here, they felt like shared agreements. And breaking them wasn't rebellious, it was disruptive in a way that didn't need confrontation. I went to a pharmacy to buy cold medicine. I grabbed something off the shelf and took it to the counter. The pharmacist looked at it, then at me. "This one's not for you," she said. I blinked. "It's just cold medicine." She shook her head slightly. "It's stronger than you need." I laughed. "I'll take my chances." She didn't smile. "You won't be buying it." That was it. Conversation closed. I stood there for a second, waiting for negotiation. None came. No upsell. No override. Just a calm refusal rooted in system logic. She handed me a different box. "This will work." And somehow, I believed her. Not because she convinced me, but because she didn't try to. The authority wasn't loud. It didn't need to be. It was embedded in the structure itself. And arguing suddenly felt irrelevant. I missed a train by seconds in Perth. It was still there, doors closed. I knocked lightly. Made eye contact with the driver. "Hey, can you open?" He looked at me, then looked forward again. The train didn't move. It just stayed closed. People inside watched silently. No one gestured. No one reacted. 30 seconds later, it left. On time. I stood there, realizing I wasn't ignored. I was processed. Back home, someone might have helped. Made an exception. Here, the system didn't adapt to me. It didn't punish me either. It just continued. And that's when it hit me, the difference isn't kindness versus coldness. It's predictability versus improvisation. In one system, you hope someone helps you. In the other, you don't need hope. Because the rules apply the same way, even when you're on the wrong side of them. I was chatting with a barista in Sydney when she casually mentioned her pay. "Around 25 an hour," she said. I nodded automatically, then froze. "Wait, hourly?" She smiled. "Yeah." I did the math in my head, then asked the obvious question. "So, you don't rely on tips?" She shook her head. "No." The way she said it wasn't proud. It was neutral. Like tips were something strange. I pushed further. "So if someone doesn't tip, you're fine?" She blinked. Why wouldn't I be? That question hit harder than the number. Back home, tips are survival. Here, they didn't exist in the same emotional space. No anxiety attached. No dependency. Just salary. I walked out doing calculations I didn't want to finish. Because once you compare systems like that, it stops being abstract very quickly. I booked a doctor's appointment for a minor issue. Nothing serious, just something I wanted checked. I walked in expecting paperwork, waiting, confusion. Instead, I checked in, sat down, and was called in 10 minutes later. The doctor listened, asked questions, gave advice, and that was it. I paused at the door. "So, how do I pay?" She looked slightly confused. "You already did." I stepped outside expecting the rail cost to arrive later. A bill. An email. Something delayed and painful. Days passed. Nothing came. I checked again, convinced I'd missed something. I hadn't. The experience felt incomplete, like a system had forgotten to punish me financially. And that's when it hit me, not being afraid of a bill changes how you experience the entire interaction before it even begins. That's the part nobody explains. It's not just about money, it's about mental load. In one system, every interaction carries hidden consequences. You're calculating constantly. In the other, the cost is known, contained, predictable. And that predictability removes something invisible but heavy. You don't notice it at first. But once it's gone, your brain feels quieter. And that silence is almost unsettling.
Guys, Subscribe, please.
I was walking through a city at night, late, quiet, not many people around. At some point, I realized I wasn't scanning. No exits. No shadows. No mental checklist. Just walking. That realization stopped me more than anything else. Because I didn't choose to relax. My body did. Automatically. And once I noticed it, I couldn't notice it. That absence of tension felt unfamiliar. The next night, I tested it. Same situation. Same result. No internal alert system firing. Back home, that awareness is constant. Subtle, but always there. Here, it wasn't. And the strange part wasn't feeling safe, it was realizing how much baseline stress I'd normalized. It wasn't fear. It was habit. And stepping outside that habit felt like stepping into a version of reality I didn't know existed. I was at a grocery store looking at eggs. Just eggs. But something felt off. I picked up a carton and read the label. No weird branding. No exaggerated claims. Just eggs. I bought them, went home, cooked them, and immediately noticed the difference. Taste. Texture. Simplicity. I checked the packaging again, like I'd missed something. I hadn't. They were just normal. I mentioned it to someone later. Yeah, they said casually. Food's just food here. That sentence stuck with me. Because back home, food feels engineered. Optimized. Extended. Here, it felt shorter. More direct. And for some reason, that made me slightly uncomfortable. Like I'd been eating a version of reality that wasn't entirely real, and only now was noticing the gap. At a small gathering, I introduced myself with energy. Confident, expressive, slightly louder than necessary. Standard American mode. People listened politely, but something felt off. Not rejection. Just distance. Later, I toned it down. Slower, quieter, less performative. And suddenly, the dynamic shifted. People leaned in. Engaged more. It wasn't about what I said. It was how I said it. Afterward, someone told me, "You don't need to sell yourself here." That line stayed with me longer than it should have. Because back home, you're always presenting something, value, personality, energy. Here, that layer felt unnecessary. And removing it didn't make me less interesting. It made me more readable. Which, strangely, felt both relieving and slightly uncomfortable at the same time. At this point, the pattern becomes impossible to ignore. It's not about one system being right and the other wrong. It's about what each system optimizes for. One prioritizes freedom, choice, and individual control, even at the cost of stress. The other prioritizes stability, predictability, and baseline comfort, even at the cost of flexibility. And once you feel both, you can't fully go back to only one. I tried to book a same-day haircut in Sydney. Walked in, empty chairs, no customers. "Hey, can I get a quick trim?" The barber looked at a notebook, then at me. "Do you have an appointment?" I shook my head. "No, but you're free right now." He nodded. "Yes." Pause. "But you need an appointment." I stood there, staring at an unused chair that somehow wasn't available. I tried to work around it. "Can I book one for now?" He checked the book again. "Next available is 14:30. It was 13:05. I looked at the empty space, then back at him. Nothing changed. No improvisation. No bending. I left, came back at 14:30, and sat in the same chair. Same barber. Same room. Now it was allowed. Not because anything changed, just because the system said it could. I was on a train in a quiet carriage. Not officially labeled, at least not obviously. I whispered to the guy next to me, "Is this the silent section?" He didn't look at me. "Yes," he said. That was it. No explanation. No correction. Just confirmation. I sat back, suddenly aware of how loud my presence felt. Not my voice, just me being there. A few minutes later, someone across the aisle turned a page louder than expected. Heads didn't turn. No one reacted. But the sound felt amplified, like the space itself rejected it. I didn't speak again. Not because I was told not to, but because I understood the rule without it being enforced. And that kind of silent agreement felt more powerful than any sign could ever be. Around day 7, something shifted in a way I wasn't prepared for. I wasn't reacting to differences anymore, I was adjusting to them. Walking slower. Speaking softer. Expecting less friction. And then the thought hit me, quietly but clearly, I didn't want to go back. Not in a dramatic way. Not emotionally. Just logically. Like returning meant re-entering something heavier. I mentioned it to a friend visiting with me. We were sitting outside, late evening, nothing happening. He nodded immediately. "Yeah," he said. "It's quieter here." I laughed. "It's not quiet." Cars were passing. People talking. Normal city noise. He shook his head. "Not that kind of quiet." I knew exactly what he meant. And that realization stayed with me longer than anything else. That's the part most people don't expect. You think you're comparing countries, but you're actually comparing nervous systems. What you're used to carrying versus what you don't have to carry anymore. And once that contrast becomes visible, it doesn't disappear. It follows you. Into airports. Into flights. Into your first day back. Because now, you have a reference point you didn't have before. Before leaving, I looked at a map of Australia next to the United States. Similar size. Completely different density. Where is everyone? I asked. Someone shrugged. Mostly near the coast. I stared at the empty center. Massive, untouched space. Back home, empty space feels like potential. Something to fill. Here, it felt intentional. Like not everything needed to be used to be valuable. That idea stayed with me longer than expected. Because it wasn't just about land, it was about mindset. One system expands, fills, optimizes every inch. The other leaves gaps. Space. Breathing room. And standing between those two approaches, you start asking uncomfortable questions about what progress actually means, and whether constant growth is always the goal, or just the default. By the end of the trip, all the small moments connected. The coffee. The rules. The silence. The systems. None of them were shocking on their own. But together, they formed something bigger. A different baseline. A different definition of normal. And the hardest part wasn't accepting that it existed, it was realizing how much of your own normal was built on things you never questioned. The last thing my friend said before leaving was simple. "I'm going to notice everything now." And that's the real shift. Not preference. Not judgment. Awareness. Because once you've experienced a system that runs on different assumptions, you don't just go back to your old one. You see it. Clearly. And sometimes, that clarity is more uncomfortable than anything you experienced while you were away.
Did you like these stories? If so, like and write in the comments what topics you'd like to hear the next stories on. Thank you. Bye bye.